why is the ending of this film, why is the ending of Return of the Jedi and this trilogy as a whole so satisfying?
Well, I think there's so many different reasons why the wrap up for this trilogy and this film in particular is like so good. I'm trying to think of how you phrased it in the question.
Oh, so satisfying.
So satisfying. Yes. But from what you were just talking about, you do get to see that redemption aspect of it because everybody loves a good redemption story. And then everybody also loves it when good defeats evil because everything is good versus evil. So dark side versus the light side of the force. And also, the underdog won. So, woo, go rebellion! Viva la revolution! So, it's a really good wrap up. And everybody's happy, everybody's partying, there's fireworks. Like, what more do you need?
Did you get to hear, which version of the movie did you watch?
Oh, dear God. I get asked this question all the time on our podcast, and I never have an
Yeah.
The one that I watched was the one that was 2 hours and 14 minutes long.
At the end of it, did you see Hayden Christensen?
Hayden Christensen.
Yeah, so
He's from
in the scene at the end
prequels,
when Yoda and Obi-Wan appear and then Anakin appears, was Anakin young or was he old?
Yeah, was it a dude you recognize or a dude that you have no clue who he is?
Well, I didn't recognize him, but I knew who he was.
Okay, so you watched the newer version.
Yeah. The only reason I asked that question.
Is that a bad thing?
No, it's not a bad thing.
Oh,
it's just that this particular ending leaves out one of Daryl's favorite parts of which was in the original theatrical release, which is a whole theme song that was like basically sung by the Ewoks.
And don't think I wasn't going to talk about it.
Oh, sorry. I'm tromping all over it.
I missed this?
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
oh my gosh.
In your defense, it's
the
hard.
One with bonus features, so I'm going to go back and
look for it.
Well, in your defense, it's hard not to see that version.
Oh, yeah.
Because the rights to the theatrical version are wrapped up with 20th Century Fox.
Yep.
And they're not going to put that version out because Disney owns everything else. So it's literally hard to go out and watch the theatrical version right now.
Absolutely.
That might change in the future, but right now that's the way it is.
If Disney buys 20th Century Fox,
that'll change everything.
All right, so let's get on to you then. I was already starting to talk over yours.
So obviously I miss the old song.
Yeah.
I miss the Yub Yub song.
Right.
Even, I mean, this is super nitpicky, but even in how it transitions to the closing Star Wars theme, as all of the Star Wars movies do.
Yeah.
The original one just transitioned better.
Right.
The new one's just sort of a random, it just clicks, and all of a sudden anyway.
Yeah.
That's small. But to answer the greater question of why is the ending so satisfying, is I think it literally wraps up every loose end and satisfies everything with a sort of happily ever after kind of ending.
Yeah.
Without sucking. Because lots of movies try to do that. And sometimes it's heavy-handed, it's forced, it's cheesy.
Yeah.
In this case, it's not, and literally everything happens. So, like, you could kind of argue that there's only one character in this who is completely irredeemable, which is Palpatine.
Right.
And he dies. So the
Or does he?
Or does he? That's true. But the irredeemable evil, as far as we knew in 1983, dies.
Yes.
And the one who could be redeemable gets redeemed.
Mm-hmm.
That's Vader. Luke gets his father back. The love triangle is solved. Luke and Leia are siblings, so Han and Leia can live happily ever after.
Yeah.
Lando is redeemed from where he was in Empire Strikes Back, from his transgressions. And just everything gets wrapped up. The Ewoks save their village, and all the cuteness gets to continue. But the biggest thing for me is, like I've said before, this movie for me, this particular trilogy for me is more about the family than it is about the Force and the Rebels versus the Empire and the light side versus the dark side. It's more about Han, Luke, Leia, Chewie, Lando, like the family.
Yeah.
And their reunion at the end of this movie, when they all come back together and they're in this beautiful foresty setting it just makes me so happy, you know? It's like they've all come to mean so much to each other, and now they can kind of sit back and enjoy that without all this other crap having to encroach on it.
Yeah. Before I give my answer, I do have to ask Garrett one question based on your love triangle thing. So Garrett, as somebody watching these things for the first time, how creepy was the love triangle to you?
When did you figure out that Luke and Leia might be siblings? Did you figure that out before they told you in the movies?
I already knew because everybody is always like, but they kissed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Like, everyone that I hang out with has already seen Star Wars, and when I tell them that I hadn't seen Star Wars until this week, I almost got slapped every time. I do have to say, though, the love triangle was creepy enough that I had to tweet about it.
Oh.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, this is one heck of a love triangle. And then Lando came in, and I was like, is this a love square now? I don't understand. And then I was like, okay, yeah, never mind. Everything's fine.
I mean, I'll say in their defense, I remember not knowing when I was younger. I remember not knowing that Luke and Leia were siblings.
Well, and when you're a kid, you just view things differently, right? You're just like, I mean...
Yeah, but I genuinely don't think that... I mean, I don't know. I guess we've talked about this before, like, there is another. Like, at some point, maybe they did know. So,
yeah.
You know, is the kiss in Empire, is that like a deliberately incestuous kiss that somebody wrote? You know, like, I don't know, but...
I don't think so.
Maybe.
I don't know. Maybe, who knows? George Lucas is putting her in bikinis, so...
Maybe they didn't... maybe they didn't know who the other was when they said it.
Yeah, that's true.
So, I don't know. I'm just saying, I remember a time when it didn't seem creepy,
right,
because I did not know that Luke and Leia were siblings.
Right. Yeah, I remember that time as well.
Yeah.
So the reason why this movie the ending is so satisfying to me comes down to two things. You guys have mentioned these sort of already, but it's, or at least one of them, sacrifice and redemption. And we've talked a lot about redemption, but I mean, we're watching Luke give up of himself. Luke is overcoming his fear. He refuses to kill his father. He chooses love over fear. That is basically the quintessential thing that we hope all human beings would do, is choose love over fear. He chooses other people over himself at the sacrifice of himself. Like, I don't think there's a better way to define hero than someone that does that, right? I think that it's kind of, Lucas doubles down on it, because what Lucas says is that then Vader, that seeing Luke give up of himself then is a catalyst for Vader to make the same exact decision.
Yeah.
Because now Vader can remember his own humanity. Now Vader is now finally feeling empathy for probably the first time since he was probably a boy. And he's not trying to mask that with fear or anything else. He's actually taking that and saying, I'm not machine. I am human. I'm not a machine. And the helmet and the fear do not define him anymore. And even I think that's even why he asks to take it off, or he asks Luke to take it off, because this doesn't define me anymore. I'm not this thing. And we know that Luke's sacrifice was the right decision, and it's shown to us that it was the right decision. Because it's not like he's like, oh, okay, I'm not going to kill Vader, and there's like lop off his head and throw him over the side. Like,
yeah. No,
like this is what's shown to be like the greater good overcoming. He's right to deny fear. He's right to deny anger and hatred. And we know that that's because of empathy, and that it inspires Vader, and then Vader makes the decision to then save his son, despite the fact that he knows that it will kill him. Because really what we get an indication of is that Vader probably would have been just fine living, except that what really killed him was the electricity, the Force lightning from the Emperor, which is really what killed him. And he didn't get the Force lightning until he threw him over the edge, right? So he chooses death in order to bring life to someone else. Again, a very selfless decision. And now it turns Vader from the worst villain. In fact, if you look at the AFI, the American Film Institute's like top villains, Vader is one of the top villains. and yet he is also a hero by the time the story finishes.
It's funny. This brings my son to my mind again too, because when I started to expose him to Star Wars and let him see stuff, he was immediately afraid of Darth Vader. And this was before he saw any cartoons or any movies or anything. I think it was from a book. It was from like a sticker book.
Oh, really?
And there was a picture of Vader, and he was scared of him, and he didn't want to play with the book.
Interesting.
And I remember telling him back then, I'm like, well, guess what, bud? Like, here's why you don't have to be afraid of Vader. Because he ends up being a hero.
Yeah.
He ends up being the good guy.
Yep.
So you don't have to be afraid of him, because in the end, he's good.
Yeah.
And I remember having that conversation with my son, and that helped. He was like, okay.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully you don't run into him in the corridor when in Rogue One before he becomes a good guy.
Yeah.
But yeah. No, I think that's really cool. I mean, like, I think that I keep telling side stories, but I was watching Jimmy Fallon, watching some clips from YouTube last night, and Daryl Strawberry came on. And Daryl Strawberry, if you follow baseball or followed baseball at all during the 80s and 90s, Daryl Strawberry became basically a villain. He went from being this home run hitter that everybody loved. He played for both coasts. He played for the Yankees and the Mets, and he also played for the Dodgers and the Giants, which is like, just take every team that could hate each other. I'll play for them. But on Jimmy Fallon, he's written a book now about addiction because he became addicted. He became an addict, and he did all of these things. He was arrested. I mean, just really not good things. And yet now we look at him and we go like, wow, he's recovered. He's spent a ton of money on charity trying to help out other people. So we talk about somebody who was the hero, but the hero in their own story, to becoming the villain, not only of their own story, but in the culture at large. And then we see him redeemed and becoming the hero for other people. Mm-hmm. And I think that those stories are just amazing. Like, my wife and I are like, Daryl Strawberry's the coolest dude ever. Like, I don't really know him well enough. I saw him on Jimmy Fallon, right? Yeah. So like, I saw him for 5 minutes, but the redemptive story is quintessential to our love of story.
Yeah.
As quintessential as tragedy is, but it is really essential to us as human beings and our connection to story.
Yeah.
So I think that's why this is so satisfying. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Well,
and sometimes I worry, like, did the fact that they continued it, does episode 7 completely undermine all of that?
Right.
And I don't actually think so. Yeah. Because if they had made a movie in the 80s, if they'd made episode 7 in the 80s, then yeah, I think it would have undermined it.
Yes.
But now, 30 years later, I don't think it does.
Right.
Because I think you can have that victory and still allow for the fact that 30 years can go by and things can change to the point where you need redemption.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. That's a really good point.